Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Ask Ruth column. I'm your host, Ruth. And reading this will bring you understanding and insight. To subscribe, like, and share this video. Welcome back to the channel, guys. So previous weeks we had talked about two-way journaling, and sometimes people call that conversational prayer. We have now transitioned from the I in family and we're moving to the A in family. So we're working on our family chart here as well. So remember, we've been focusing a lot on our mindset, really working on that inner work, the I in the family, which is for the individual of the family unit. So we've really been working on that. And now we're kind of mixing the A and the I together. And the week before we talked about that conversational prayer, the two-way journaling that really helps open that conversation and help grow that relationship with our Creator. So when we look at the A, it's all about moving into that area of awareness. Remember that two-way conversational prayer, sometimes we're trying to seek that guidance and changing ourselves or seeking guidance, and maybe that we need to give forgiveness and just allowing God to take over at that point, and not so much as just focusing it on us, because there's some things that we dwell on that is out of our control, but we take it on as if it is something we can control. And that is something that we have to do that self-work on, and to make sure that we understand ourselves and our journey. Remember, we had talked about the self-love aspect that all relates back to that. Okay? So, getting into today, you're probably thinking, this is a weird topic that we're talking about, right? And reading this will bring you understanding and insight. So, I don't know how many of you know, I'm actually dyslexic, and I've worked through that. Normal people with dyslexia, they don't tend to like to read a lot. I like to read a lot, but there's also some things that I had to go through in order to even understand what I just read. A lot of times people that have dyslexia, they'll definitely understand what I mean. So when I first started learning how to read, or knowing how to work with this disability that I do have, however, I worked through it. And what it was is that I would read, it could just be a sentence. When I was first learning, it was a sentence, and you could ask me what the first word in that sentence was. I couldn't tell you. Because my brain had to work so hard to flip the letters around just for me to comprehend what the word was, let alone for me to retain what it was saying. So this kind of came from that, and just how I had to overcome some just challenges throughout my life. And then what was a very interesting concept that I didn't know, I did it because of my disability, but a lot of people that really want to make a big, huge change in their life does this every time that they read books. So you guys know I'm a big fan of Bob Proctor, and one of his books that he recommends to read is Think and Grow Rich. And I have a PDF version of that book. But there's a lot of other books he also recommends, like The Science of Getting Rich and U Squared. Now, probably thinking, well, why Think and Grow Rich and, The Science of Getting Rich. It is not about money. A lot of people think it is. It's enrichment of your life. You can ask me what it means to me to be rich, and I'm going to tell you something different than someone else would. We would not have the same definition because it is not the same for everyone. It doesn't look the same for everyone. So that is why we're talking about this, so you can actually help grasp the information. And when I started applying it the way that even Bob Proctor teaches on how to do it, was similar to what I was already doing, so it wasn't such a big different task for me, but it did bring more insight to a lot of things and more understanding as I did this into my practice. So I'm going to share those techniques that I learned, and I just don't do it on self-help books. Anything that I want to retain, I think that's important to know. It's anything that you want to retain. If you're studying for a test, if you're wanting to do self-help, if you want to get better in the memorizing scripture, these are things that you can do, and it just will stick. Like this whole book here, I know this book, and we're going to go over that in a minute. Like, I won't have to read it, I just know it. But so let's get into that today. Focus scripture today is from Ephesians 3:4. In reading this, then you will be able to understand my insight into the mystery of Christ. Understand into the mystery of Christ and have the insight too. So I think this verse here is speaking a little bit more here. And reading in general will give you insight. So when we are thinking about this, don't think that, it's applying a different method of reading. Okay? So how I do this is, and it doesn't matter, what I do is I will take and I will get my book and I will read it. I will read my chapter first. By the way, if you guys have not read U Squared, it's an amazing read. Highly recommend this book. Highly recommend this book. It's from Price Pritchard. So I'll put a link in the description below so you guys can find this book here. But it's a great read. So I have another journal. So here's my journal. So what I do is I will read one chapter. I will just read it, just read my chapter. And then once I've done the one chapter, now it depends on the book. This book's chapters is literally like, here's the first one, the promise. It's literally one page, okay? So in a big chapter book, I would focus on a couple pages a day. in the book, and then I would have a stopping point. Normally it's like 4 pages in a huge chapter book, something like Think and Grow Rich. So what I do is I read my chapter, and then I write it down, word for word. I write it down, word for word. Okay, so what is this doing? So remember when I told you I have dyslexia, and I couldn't remember what exactly was even the first word in the sentence? Well, when I first started, before I started doing this, because of that, it was because I would go back and I would reread, and it still wasn't sticking. So I had to figure out a way for the information to stick. Only way that I was able to get that information to stick was when I would read the chapter. I would read it with ease first, because doing this takes a lot more energy than just reading it. But then like I said, I wouldn't remember what I read, so it's not beneficial. But always the second time, for me at least anyway, for having dyslexia, it actually is easier to read the second time. So what I would do is I would just write it down as I read it the second time. I would just write every word for word down in my own handwriting. And I would just write it down. I have several of these in any of the books that I read. It goes, well, this journal is not completely full yet, but it will be. So every time I read, I write it down. So this gets stuck in your mind. And then the next day, I reread the same chapter before I move on to the next chapter. And then, like I said, in large books that have large chapters that you want to move through, I only choose about 4 pages. Yeah, but the information stays. Information stays in your mind, and it's easier to be applied. Now, I do recommend rereading books. Think and Grow Rich, I'm on my 7th round of Think and Grow Rich. Now, does that mean every time I'm going to rewrite it in my notes and rewrite it word for word? No, because when I go to reread a book or go into scripture and reread a scripture that I've already read, it's not to obtain knowledge. It's to see where my growth is, to be honest. And there's a lot of times that I didn't see it then because I wasn't ready for it then. Sometimes you're just not ready to see things at a certain time. And that's okay. We're all on different times and different journeys within our life. And guys, age is just a number. Don't let it fool you. Just a number. So again, this is just a technique I use. It helps me see things at a different perspective. It brings more insight to what I'm reading, and it does help resonate with me at a certain time in my life too. And another technique I do, and especially with, like, we talked about it in the 2-way journaling, and a little bit in the 2-way journaling. And it doesn't always have to be within the Bible and the scripture, but motivational books, you can do this as well. And sometimes when I open the book, I'll just flip through, and then I will see, I'll feel where I need to be at that moment. And there are times that brings such enlightenment to maybe an interaction that I had. Or maybe I don't understand why I got that, but then later that day I have something very difficult that I needed to, and then I'm like, oh, I needed that. So when you're exercising this type of reading, that you're being able to grasp more understanding about a subject or self-improvement, because sometimes these self-help books, a lot of people say they don't work. Well, was it applied correctly? I've done a lot of self-help work. And that doesn't mean like, oh, I need a lot of work. No, it just means that I'm aware that it takes the work. So as you move through this, it helps you not only have a greater relationship with your creator, but it also helps you have that greater relationship with yourself. Like I've said before, we come here alone and we're going to leave alone. And you're with yourself 24/7. So you better love yourself. You better love yourself. Because if you don't, who's going to love you? You have to have that self-love too, to be able to resonate that love to others. Remember, your spiritual DNA is perfect. Perfect. And again, thank you for watching. Until next time, I'm your host, Ruth, signing off. Shalom.